They said the theatre of dreams never sleeps. But what happens when the dreams turn into recurring nightmares? Expensive, noisy, and watched by the whole world. This is the story of the greatest football club in England, losing not only trophies, but something far more valuable: respect. Stay with me, because the ending might be closer to a rebirth than anyone dares to believe. Manchester United. Even the name used to make Europe flinch. For years, the red shirt meant inevitability, a last-minute winner, a manager who stared down time itself, a stadium that swallowed teams whole. Under Sir Alex Ferguson, the numbers were beyond logic. League titles stacked like bricks, cup runs that felt scripted, European nights that started with belief and ended with parades. Old Trafford wasn't just loud, it was a verdict. And then, in 2013, the spell broke. When the man who built the empire stepped away, the club he left behind went searching for a new soul. Instead, it found noise. Money flooded in. So did big names. So did big promises. And one by one, they dissolved into the same puddle of confusion. A team that had everything except an identity. The spending was staggering. Transfer fees that could fund a small nation. Wages that could power a city. Yet the return felt like buying a 1,000-piece puzzle where none of the pieces fit. The recruitment wasn't just unlucky, it was unfocused. Chasing a moment, chasing a headline, chasing the ghost of a dynasty that couldn't be bought, only built. You could see the pattern from a mile away. The marquee signings who were meant to be saviours became stories. The future stars who were meant to define a generation became debates. A goalkeeper meant to revolutionise the build-up became a weekly argument. A winger destined to electrify became the most expensive question mark in the room. A striker billed as the next great nine was left counting half chances and half trust. It was never about one player. It was about a system that didn't know what it wanted to be. And that uncertainty fed everything. On the touchline, new ideas arrived like seasons: possession revolution, counterpunch revival, pressing gospel, pragmatic control. Managers came with manifestos. Each was introduced as the start of a new era. Each left behind a half-finished sketch. The chalkboard was wiped clean so many times that even the chalk looked tired. Inside the training ground, you could almost hear the questions players stopped asking out loud. What are we, really? What do we do better than anyone else? What am I being built into? A finisher or a facilitator? A winger or a wingback? A leader or a scapegoat? A star or a sellable asset? The results told their own story. Big nights became big lessons. Smaller clubs arrived with plans and left with smiles. Cup exits felt less like shocks and more like predictable twists in a bad series. Even the defeats that went to penalties carried the same taste in the mouth. An old giant running out of breath against opponents with sharper ideas and hungrier legs. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This wasn't just about tactics. It wasn't even just about transfers. It was cultural. It was psychological. The shirt that once lifted players now felt like it weighed a kilo more every week. United didn't only sign footballers, it signed anxieties. Every mistake throbbed under a floodlight. Every missed chance echoed through a decade of doubt. The club stopped filtering talent for the weight of the crest, and talent buckled. Around the boardroom, the revolving doors spun almost as fast as the narratives. Sporting directors in, sporting directors out. New structures announced, new structures amended, new structures abandoned. A strategic plan on Monday felt like a headline by Friday and a memory by Sunday. The clearest picture wasn't a blueprint, it was a blur, and so the manager's office became an electric chair. One after another sat down, spoke of belief, and felt the current of expectations surge. One balanced the past with pragmatism and left with one trophy and 1,000 arguments. Another tried to heal the scars with joy and romance and found out that nostalgia doesn't press, mark, or win second balls. Another brought rules and rigor and collided with icons. The next tried to modernize the shape, walk the team into the future, and discovered that a system without flexibility turns into a cage. At its worst, it felt like a loop. A tactical pattern rehearsed on Tuesday would unravel on Saturday. The ball would go wide, the overload would form, and the door would stay locked. Opponents mirrored the shape, shut down the lanes, and watched the clock. Possession without persuasion, movement without menace. If football is a language, United forgot how to write a sentence that ended in an exclamation mark. And yet, for every failure on the tactical board, there was a human story with rough edges. A young midfielder who reads the game like a veteran but gets shuffled to protect the plan. A winger with wildfire in his boots, asked to hold a zone rather than attack a man. A striker still forming himself, judged as if he were already sculpted from granite. Then the cycle repeats. Benchings, brief recalls, a quote, a headline, a drop in confidence, the hum of cynicism growing louder than the roar of belief. This is what some call football heritage, not the banners and medals, but the residue of decisions, the habits that stick, the tone of the dressing room, the way a bad week becomes a bad month, becomes a bad season, the resignation that creeps in when you try to be everything and end up as nothing in particular. United became addicted to short-term cures, but quick fixes don't heal bones, they numb them. And then, the result no one wants to remember, but everyone can't forget. The night a club with less history and fewer resources outplayed the giant, and it didn't feel like a shock. The afternoon a 4th Division side held their ground and watched a Premier League heavyweight swing and miss, and then fail the test of nerve from 12 yards. On paper, those matches fade. In the bloodstream, they linger. So what do you do when an institution loses its way? You start by telling the truth. The problem isn't only who plays right wing or which centre-back partners whom. The problem is that the club forgot what kind of team it wants to be. Every single day, against every single opponent, with every single touch. Recruitment must be a sentence that starts with identity, not a word cloud of famous names. Scouting must ask, does this player amplify our game? Not just, can he win us a news cycle? You redraw the lines of responsibility. Coaches set principles. Players bring them to life. Directors recruit to those principles. The club protects the project from panic. If any one of those links breaks, the chain snaps. And the season snaps with it. You put the academy back in the bloodstream, not as a story but as a structure. When a young midfielder has the vision to play through pressure, you make the pitch fit him, not the other way around. When a homegrown winger breaks a line with courage, you reward risk with trust. When a teenager plays with the urgency your team lacks, you let that urgency define the standard. Youth alone is not a strategy, but youth aligned with identity is a superpower. You reframe the conversation with the veterans, not as symbols of failed eras, but as bridges to the next one. The right kind of experience steadies the storm. The fullback who teaches positioning by example. The midfielder who drags teammates 5 yards higher in the 88th minute. The forward who sprints for a lost cause in a game that's already won. Because that sprint becomes a habit others copy. On the grass, the principles have to get simple and stubborn. Play with a clear press trigger, not a vague instruction. When the ball goes to the opposition fullback on their weaker side, the nearest forward goes. The midfield locks the middle, the defensive line squeezes 10 metres. Everybody knows the script, everybody moves on the same drumbeat. Attack with layered runs, not lonely ones. One to pin the last line, one to attack the channel, one to arrive late at the edge. The winger's job is not just to receive, it's to manipulate the fullback into choosing wrong. Give the 9 a passing lane to feet and the third man a lane beyond. Use rotations as a weapon, not a fashion statement. The 6 can drop to form the back 3 only if the 8 steps to receive between the lines. If the fullback inverts, the winger must hold width. If the fullback stays wide, the winger comes inside to overload the half space. Patterns are not prison cells, they're promises you make to teammates. And above all, let risk live in the team again. United's greatest moments were not safe, they were brave. A pass punched through pressure, a centre-back driving into midfield, a one-touch layoff in a tight pocket because the move matters more than the fear. That bravery was the club's old language. It needs to be fluent again. The manager who leads this shift doesn't have to be a celebrity. He has to be a unifier. A communicator with a plan the dressing room can feel, not just hear. Someone who adapts without losing the thread. Someone whose team has a face you can sketch blindfolded, compact without the ball, aggressive in transition, composed in the final third. Not married to a formation, married to principles. The squad, for all the noise, is not a wasteland. There is talent to sculpt. A midfield prospect with scanning habits far beyond his years. A centre-back with range and bite. A winger who can bend a game with a single acceleration. A striker with tools to become a menace if given structure and service, not just responsibility. Even in goal, there's raw material waiting for a system that protects, supports, and simplifies. Recruitment cannot chase aura. It must chase fit. Think profiles, not posters. A right-sided forward who threatens the back post, yes, but who also defends the switch, who reads the fullback's body shape, who can play on the blind side of a centre-back and time the run, not just take on a man. A midfielder who breaks lines with passing and angles his body to play forward on the first touch. A fullback who can invert without losing defensive instinct. These are not buzzwords, they're puzzle pieces. And when the window opens, discipline is everything. 1 or 2 pieces that shift the whole, not 6 that shift nothing. A clear spine, goalkeeper with calm distribution, centre-backs who defend space, a 6 who organises the press and receives under pressure, an 8 who breaks lines with and without the ball, a 9 who converts territory into terror. Build the team like an argument that keeps convincing you the longer you listen. The culture must grow teeth. Accountability without humiliation. Standards without the press conference theatre. When performances drop, the correction happens on the training pitch, not in a microphone. When a player steps out of line, the response is private, swift, and fair. When the team wins, humility leads. When it loses, responsibility is shared. Because here's the quiet, powerful truth. Respect returns before trophies do. It returns in the 1-0 you kill off with maturity. It returns in the away game where the crowd expects you to fold and you don't. It returns in the way opponents speak about you. Not they're vulnerable if you push wide, but they won't give you an inch. Respect returns in the habits, long before it returns in the highlights. There's a line you can draw through this entire decade, from the dizzying heights of certainty to the fog of improvisation. But the fog can lift. The blueprint is not exotic, it's patient. It's what the best clubs did while United chased the mirror. They aligned the manager with the recruitment profile. They protected the project from the turbulence of a bad month. They promoted youth into defined roles, not desperate needs. They coached details, body shape, distances, triggers, until they were muscle memory. Imagine the first 3 months of a reset. Week 1, every player gets their role in writing. What the staff expects with the ball, without the ball, in transition. Video meetings are short and specific. Training emphasizes distances between lines and the first 5 seconds after losing possession. The message is simple. We will be the best team in the league at the first 5 seconds after we lose it. Week 2, set pieces become an obsession. Not a side project, a pillar. 2 defensive schemes, 2 attacking routines added each week. Accountability is tracked. A goal conceded from a corner is a system failure, a responsibility, not a shrug. Week 3, possession principles are drilled with constraints. 2 touch in build-up, 3 in the final third. Third man runs are non-negotiable. The 9 learns to check to feet only when a midfielder runs beyond, otherwise pins the centre-backs. Wingers practice timing, not just dribbles. Arrive behind the fullback when the 8 receives on the half-turn. Month 2, personnel is tweaked, not overturned. A youngster trusted in the role he plays best, not shuttled to make a point. A veteran moved 10 yards to unlock a passing lane we kept ignoring. Micro-adjustments that produce macro clarity. Month 3, identity is visible. The crowd can see it. Win or lose, they know what the team is trying to do. Respect returns, not because of speeches, but because of sequences. Press, regain, vertical pass, cross, cutback, goal. Or press, regain, reset, circulate, probe, shift, overload, slip, finish. This becomes the team's handwriting, and when the summer arrives, the window becomes surgical. One creator who can beat a man and release early. One runner from midfield who arrives at the back post like a striker. One defender who wins the first duel and organises the second. That's how a squad stops being an expensive collection and becomes a living system. The ending of this chapter, this long, painful chapter, doesn't have to be dramatic. It has to be deliberate. The next coach cannot be the most famous name. He must be the clearest fit. If the shortlist includes a calm man-manager who lifts psychological weight, good. If it includes a possession evangelist who teaches patterns that liberate talent, good. But whoever it is, the club must choose a path and defend it. Because under the noise, the foundation is still there. The stadium still trembles when belief returns. The badge still dares careers to become legends. The academy still grows players who see passes adults miss. The market still holds profiles that fit the plan. The difference between 10 more years of wandering and 1 season of momentum is alignment and patience. United fans know suffering. They also know how quickly this place can transform when the team plays with conviction. One sequence of honest football and the entire stadium breathes differently. 1 month of clean sheets and the language around the club softens. 1 season with a defined identity and the rest of the league feels the temperature change. So let the past be the lesson, not the leash. Let the future be built with quiet competence, not loud promises. Let the shirt feel lighter because the plan is heavier. And when the next big night arrives, let the sound you hear be familiar. Not the sigh of confusion, but the roar of inevitability. If you felt every beat of this story, if you want to see the full rebuild, the tactics, the transfers, the youth and the psychology, subscribe to Infinite Football right now. Hit that button, join our community and be part of the conversation that refuses to accept chaos as destiny. Your support helps us make deeper dives, smarter analysis, and the kind of football films this club and this game deserve. Because the Theatre of Dreams doesn't need a miracle, it needs a method. And methods, when done right, make miracles inevitable. Subscribe to Infinite Football. New chapters are coming.